How many discounts does USAA Auto Insurance offer? Too many to say here. Multi-vehicle discount, safe driver discount, new vehicle discount, storage discount, legacy.
How many discounts will you stack up? Visit USAA.com/auto discounts. Restrictions apply.
With a major selection of the looks your kiddos love starting at just $4 in the Walmart app, a new school year means a stylish new them. Who knew? Find skater skirts and Crocs that say, I'm casual but cool. Sparkly sneakers that say, it's my classroom, you're just learning in it. And preppy polos that say, I'm the teacher's pet, even if they're mommy's menace at home. Find their favorite styles starting at just $4 in the app. The Walmart you thought you knew is now new.
What would you do if a stranger knew the most intimate details of conversations you had with your therapist?
Okay, I'll tell you later. But today's guest, Max Lebow, faced that exact nightmare. What started with a creepy Instagram message spiraled into a full spectrum digital war, complete with a mysterious hacker, a global conspiracy, and threats that pushed him to the edge.
From personal privacy invasion to psychological manipulation, Max's new podcast, The Final War, shows how deep and how creepy cyber warfare can go.
Stay tuned. This isn't just about hacking, it's about survival. Welcome to What the Hack, the true cybercrime podcast. I'm Adam Levin.
I'm Beau Friedlander.
And I'm Travis Taylor.
Max Lebow is a filmmaker who found himself at the center of a digital nightmare, which he now turned into the podcast, The Final War. In it, Max tells the story of being hacked by a mysterious figure who knew the most intimate details of his life, and how that intrusion spiraled into something much bigger, involving global conspiracies and psychological manipulation. If you've never worried about your privacy online, this is why you should. Max, welcome to What the Hack. And first thing, where are you coming to us from?
I'm currently in New York, which is where the whole thing began, but I haven't been back here for a while, so it's fortuitous timing.
Max, before we dive into the chaos, what were you doing before you first realized something wasn't quite right?
That's a great question. I worked for a documentary filmmaker, Brian Fogel, Oscar-winning, amazing filmmaker. I had the opportunity to go be an intern and then his assistant and then produce some movies. So before that, I was an actor when this whole hack situation was going on. So entertainment industry, vaguely.
Have we seen you in anything?
If you watch Mr. Robot, you might have seen me coked out of my mind talking about the Earth being flat in one episode.
Were you actually coked out of your mind, or was that acting?
No, it was all smoke and mirrors and powder and mirrors, I guess. Leave some room for some mystery, I guess. And then I was on the blacklist, one episode playing a Russian terrorist. There's something about my face. I just look like a bad guy or a weird guy or something, but it got me work, so I'll take it.
Max, let's go back to the start, and I have to preface this with saying that in our line of work, I think Beau, Travis, and I will tell you that we have heard some crazy-ass stories, but this could well be the most crazy-ass story we have ever heard. So how did this start? What happened?
I was on South 5th and Havemeyer Street in Brooklyn, sitting on my green couch, unemployed, most likely in my underwear, scrolling on Instagram or watching TV or something.
What year are we in?
It was March 6th, 2018.
What happened?
Coincidentally enough, I had just booked my first principal acting role on Mr. Robot, like first speaking role ever. I hadn't worked the day on the show yet. So I was currently unemployed, but maybe a little hopeful about a career. And I got a comment on an Instagram picture, a random picture that my friend had taken of me that I thought was artsy and cool. And you'll notice throughout this, I have to take big, deep breaths because it's still like re-traumatizing myself every time I tell a story. So it read like a riddle. It said, attention to you, Max Elbow, strangely. Which is, at first I was like, is this a friend messing with me? What's going on here? But then I wanted to say, like, this is the new schism. Your leader takes missteps and we see you there in the wake. Like not just like, hey, send us money. Like, this is it was beautiful and poetic, and it had my cross streets in it. And I'm not a tech savvy person, so I didn't know. I guess it's relatively easy to find someone's address, like doxing or whatever, but also that's still concerning.
The way you describe it is like the third act of Ghostbusters. You know, when Rick Moranis goes, "I am the Keymaster," but it sounds kind of that ilk, weird-wise. But
Yeah.
what did you make of that approach?
Pretty immediately, I had a flourish of adrenaline. I felt like I was third person watching myself. Like there was something about it that was so jarring, and it's so interesting to pay attention to your mind fires in that situation as a sane person relatively this is probably something unspectacular. And one of those options could be that it's a friend who's messing with me, but do I have friends who do stuff like this? Not really. So I was kind of going through all those things in my mind, but all the while there's this one very loud voice in my head that's like, this is Morpheus. You know what I mean? And that could be the part of me that I find that I have an active imagination. I probably have some inclination toward, to be kind to myself. It's like looking for some kind of purpose in life, but maybe there's some grandiosity in there. I don't know. But I was just like, this is spectacular. This is otherworldly.
You're there, a thing appears on your Instagram page. It's a message. Now, there are a lot of people who get these DMs and it's some kind of scam. But obviously you read this and something triggered something that was like, this is the Matrix or something. What?
I think that might have been maybe the third or fourth thought, because the first thing is the address. Someone is saying, I see you. And it goes on to get more specific about them seeing me. So that's the first thing where I'm like, I see my address, and that's the first thing that activates me.
Is it your street address, the number?
It wasn't the number, but they go on to say 7th floor, sitting on a green couch. I was sitting on my green couch and convinced someone was outside of my door. But so around the address is this riddle. So that's where it gets like Matrixy, because there, a pale, frail bird is looking up at you from the perch. What is known cannot be unknown. Like this really beautiful poetry that is horrifying and threatening, and it feels like White Rabbit type, type information.
So with the green couch, was that anywhere on your Instagram feed or any other social media accounts?
So I had moved into the apartment 2 weeks before. I was 10 months sober at the time, and I had just moved out of a sober living house. And so it was like my first place by myself. I had just bought the couch a couple days before.
So Max, there was no picture anywhere.
No, certainly not. No way.
Tell me this, Max. What kind of computer do you use?
MacBook.
And that has a camera in it.
It does.
Was that camera of your MacBook ever pointed at your couch?
Certainly. So I get this message, and I was living with my ex-girlfriend at the time, and I called her immediately. That was my instinct was to call her. And I was like, I don't know what to do. She was babysitting. She didn't know what was going on. She was overwhelmed by my energy from the other side of the phone. And I was like, I don't know what to do. She's like, go to the police. I was like, police? This is one mess. That's crazy. This is probably just my instinct was at the beginning, although there was this Matrix voice in my head, was this is something solvable that you need to take care of, just get to the bottom of it. I was like, I need to know why somebody knows where I live that. I'm not the type of person, and there are people like this, I've come to find out, who can just see that message and click something in their brain and just block it and not think about it. That's not the type of person that I am. I'm going to lay in bed at night being like, why did that happen? So
clearly this is impacting you. It's got you all nervous. It's got you fantasizing about whatever it could be, or catastrophizing about what it. So did you think it was is this really a scam or a hacker, or was this mysterious, almost mythical?
As I have my therapist on the show, first episode, to validate my sanity. Although there is the fantasy, the fantastical side of me that is fantasizing, is a little bit excited. The bulk of my thinking was, this is manageable. I can figure this out. Every step I took, there were more questions.
Okay, so now you've decided this is the real deal, correct?
Yeah, the first thing I said is, who are you? They said, Xi. I said, no shit, what do you want from me? To comprehend. So they're being very vague and everything, but then every few messages they say, we see you sitting there on the green couch with your girlfriend, Lainey.
And they knew her name.
They knew her name, and to her it's relevant. They spelled it correctly because she spells it a little bit differently. But that one feels easy because that could be on Instagram, you know? But the green couch is not easy. And then they said on the 7th floor, there will be a clue. So I'm like, cross streets, floor, couch. Like, boom, I'm like in their sights. And that's when I start to be like, there's only 4 people who have been into my apartment since I moved in here, know that I live here, certainly even know that I have a green couch. And it's like my brother, my girlfriend, and like 2 friends who just wouldn't, like, I know my instincts are like, this isn't them doing this, you know? So then the field really opens up in terms of possibilities, and veers into that mythical area.
Are you in danger?
According to them, we have access. I've read these lines so many times. We have access, but it is not our desire to make a disturbance. You're in no danger. And the whole time I'm saying, I want to like help, like tell me what this is, tell me what's going on. I want to ensure my safety. And they're like, you're fine. Nothing's going to happen. I use the word martyr, or whatever. And they're like, you're not going to die. Everything's okay. They were being vague. There was no threat. It felt like a threat because when someone on the internet tells you where you live, it feels like a threat. But they were like, we're your friends. We're here to help. We're just saying hi. This is a very simple introduction. Granted, I didn't feel that way, but I felt very unsafe. But according to them, I was.
So at this point, did you have any clue as to who they were?
No, it would be a very long time before. They give me their story very literally about who they say they are on the other line, on the other side of the line of, or not sanity, but on the other side of the line of like what your average person would consider to be possible. And that's what I mean by mythical is not, you know, actually the Matrix, but just something that is so unbelievable and so unheard of that it feels larger than life. And their story about who they are is that.
Were there any signs that they weren't like fluent in English? Could this just have been a really weirdly glitchy Google Translate? A really weirdly glitchy Google translation?
Yeah, so pretty early on I said, I need something to go off of. And they said, what do you mean by go off of? Our translator gives us an error. Which to me is 100% they're using a translator, because if they weren't and then they lied about that detail to make it seem like they were, that seems way too minute of a detail to lie about. But yeah, and it sounded translated, but it was also very eloquent, everything they said.
What did they want from you?
To be a mole is what they said.
What?
They want you to be a mole.
I say that with the hopes of brevity. Who they said they were was a group of dissidents, Chinese military, broke away when they realized the technology they were working on was being used in a war on human consciousness. Again, this is what they said, this side of the line for now. And they broke away and they essentially came to New York, is what they said, to do recon, figure out the world, and combat this technology. In terms of what they wanted from me, they said, you are an actor, but nobody knows who you are. We're Chinese, speak English with an accent. You're a white American, you speak English natively, so you're maybe more trusted in certain circles. I also had some run-ins with the police when I was younger and sold illicit substances and was able to kind of talk my way out of that. And there's other things about my character that they would explain that kind of, I guess, make me, potentially capable of something like that if we're on this side of the line. But that was what they said. Yeah, mole.
Max, did you have a record that was searchable?
No, I did not. I never, thankfully, got caught. But what they said was that time on 5th Street where you talked your way out of a situation with the police with pounds of marijuana in the back of your car.
Had you ever been arrested?
Never been arrested.
Never arrested.
Never arrested. Just speeding tickets.
You say you hadn't been arrested, Max, and you say also that there's no record of this thing that they were referring to. Sorry, I couldn't resist. They couldn't know. But there is one way they could know, because you mentioned that you had been a person who took advantage of a group program for the cessation of substance abuse. And so if you did that, presumably you had told your story in that group setting. Am I right about that?
There was a time where I was thinking about what type of maybe sketchy characters have I come across in these groups.
I'll tell you, I have a friend who has an incredibly famous father who went to one of these group meetings, and it showed up in page 6 weeks later. So, you cannot be too careful when it comes to this sort of thing. Did it occur to you that one of the people that had been in the room where you were being vulnerable and telling your story may have been your hacker?
It was a rough time because I relied on those groups. I was in the meeting, everybody, and assessing, it would probably be someone who I might know or trust, very suspicious, hindering the benefit of those groups for me.
Okay, so let's pause for a second. Now, we know this story is already dipping into some wild, almost mythical territory, but for anyone feeling skeptical, remember what really made Max stop in his tracks was how specific and personal the details were. We're not just talking about vague threats here. This G knew things about Max that weren't public, including private conversations that were never shared online.
This wasn't your typical scam. It was like someone had a front row seat to his life. I have a different thing I would say, but let's just say life. And that's what makes it so unsettling. But things are about to get even stranger.
So stick around, because after the break, we're going to dive into what she wanted from Max and how their demands pushed him to his breaking point.
Hey, it's Paris. You know I love sparkly things, right? Like stars. Duh. And thanks to Hilton and AutoCamp, I just slept under them. Picture me serving looks by the fire outside my luxurious Airstream, making s'mores with the kids, while a national park is our backdrop. The great outdoors meets Hilton hospitality. That's hot. Explore all the new ways to stay at Hilton.com. Hilton for the stay.
This episode is sponsored by Friskies, who would like to tell your cats hi. Now, if that didn't get your cat's attention, there is one thing that always does the trick. Just pour some Friskies crunchy food in the bowl and you'll hear those paws come running. Works every time. With so many Friskies choices, you can always bring your cats running from their secret napping spots. There's always more to explore. See for yourself at friskies.com or visit your local store.
Before the break, we touched on the unsettling personal details the hacker had about Max's life. But there's another more grounded aspect to all of this, one that taps into the very real threat of global hacking operations. Hackers based in regions like Africa and especially China are known for targeting American citizens to gather sensitive information.
Right. But what if we're dealing with a new kind of hacking that we're not even fully aware of yet? Something sophisticated and terrifyingly effective with a very specific agenda.
Exactly. I mean, you can take sniffer devices, for example. A lot of phones have it, but there's also the Flipper Zero, which is a pretty well-known one. And it can scan information from nearby devices like phones and credit cards without you realizing.
Imagine if a hacker brought one of these sniffers to, say, a group recovery meeting where people are at their most vulnerable. They'd have access to passwords, personal info, everything. It's the perfect storm for exploitation because people are saying things that they definitely do not want brought outside of those rooms.
Yeah. It's interesting, and I appreciate your insight and your expertise here because I moved on a lot quicker than this from like it's someone in these groups that's preying on me or whatever. It's certainly possible, and I think also when you ask kind of like why me, what the purpose is for me in this, my vulnerability is high on that list. Being newly sober relatively is you're reshaping your sense of yourself and your purpose and everything like that. So it's a very vulnerable time. And there's also times where if there's any payments to be made for anything in those meetings, you could use your phone, tap a square.
Wow, that's right. That's right.
It's certainly possible at this point.
What happened next?
Over the course of a few weeks, we messaged back and forth incessantly on my part. And oftentimes they would leave me on red, which is very strange. And it took them some time to even get to what they wanted from me. It was very much like, the world is not what it seems. We're just like tapping on your door to say like, hello, like acclimatize yourself to this true reality that we live in, that you have been curious of maybe, but are just waking up to. But essentially, they explained who they were, these allegedly Chinese dissidents, but that there was this war for the human mind. And it sounds, when you start, it sounds like it's over here on this side of the line, but when you kind of start to think about the current technologies that we have, it's like Neuralink or things like that, there's question marks that start to come up, and I think we should all be a little bit skeptical. But that's pretty much what comes out in those first few weeks of messaging is, there's this war, we have a purpose for you, this is who we are, and we want you to meet with an agent. Give us a code word and somebody will come find you in public and say this code word, and they'll give you the next steps.
Did you ever wonder why me?
Yeah, and it always is one of people's first questions, and I appreciate it because, for two reasons. One, it's humbling because there's a part of me maybe that feels capable of something like this, but I would come to find out I might be very amateurish in the world of espionage. But I was piecing that together slowly because there were the reasons I said before, and then also I've traveled to Russia, I've traveled to Cuba. I am adjacent to people with a lot of power, I think. And so when I start to kind of piece it together in my head, there might be some reasons, some actually grounded reasons why, I fit several criteria for something like this, whatever it is.
So you were able to tell yourself a narrative that made sense. One of the interesting things about scams is that they're a little like horoscopes. One day you say, oh yeah, that's true. And if you read one that's not your sign, you might also say, oh yeah, that's true. Unless you're reading one about Virgos, those are all very different. But anyway, hackers are good at setting up plausibility.
Certainly. Whether their narrative was true or not, they knew me very well. Maybe better than a lot of people in my life.
So when they were giving you these messages, what were you saying in return? Like, what was that actually like a dialogue, or did they just keep on saying some crazy, weirdly poetic stuff to you?
It was very much a dialogue, either poetic and vague or threatening. At the beginning, especially the first and second day, I was pleading, very scared and not grounded at all.
You were pleading to be a secret agent?
I was pleading, tell me what's going on. Please tell me I'm safe. Tell me the people in my life are safe.
What made you think they might not be?
I had never even dipped a toe into this world. So when someone told me, and there's a war going on, and the world is not what it seems, I was horrified. There was no part of me that was like, okay, cool.
And they convinced you it was real because they knew a lot of real stuff about you.
Yeah.
At what point did you kind of start to reach your limit here?
There's kind of two answers to that question. So there's a point where, based on all the counsel of pretty much everyone in my life and my own sense of horror with this situation, that when was it? Towards the beginning of the summer of 2019. So this was like March, April, May, maybe May or June. I become a fuck off person. I tell them, leave me alone. I don't want anything to do with this. And they're like, cool, peace, no worries. They had said the whole time, if you want us to go away, tell us and we will. And so eventually I did, and they did. And 6 months go by. actually, in the meantime, they created a fake Instagram page in my name, had conversations with girls that I had dated, and asked them about me, memories they had of me, and that happened kind of in the background while I wasn't talking to them. And so I thought they were gone, but they very much were not. I get an opportunity to go work for Brian Fogel. I go to LA. Life is great for a while. This was Halloween of 2019. So I had a few months of working for this great guy in LA and having a wonderful time before COVID hits. And when COVID hits, Brian is friends with someone, I can't say his name, but a well-known Hollywood type and philanthropist who ran a big COVID testing company. So we started helping them because he asked for our help because we weren't working. So we were working comms for this COVID company, and the hackers came back. Because now, if I did have any value before, I certainly have value now in terms of the people that I'm connected to. The situation I'm in, being a part of the comms division of a COVID testing company in the very first days, and then going on to, I was on the site testing people. And so they came back and they were very curious about all of that. And to answer your question again, the next F off comes much later, because this is the portion of the story where things get kind of dark.
Obviously, it's fair to say that you were feeling extremely out of control for all of the months leading up to this. Is there something you did where you felt that it put you more into control, where it made things make more sense?
Big piece of this for me is like purpose, especially like getting sober, kind of refiguring out your life, like looking for purpose. And so anytime that I had something that felt meaningful to me, it made me feel less like I needed to go find something else like this. So, but that's more like an internal answer to your question, I think. In terms of the external of who they are, the only time that I felt somewhat grounded throughout this process until the end, when there's a whole investigation, the only time I felt kind of grounded was when I gave in and I believed them. And I took their word for it, that they were my friends and they were protecting me. And that is the darkness of the mental backflips and the Stockholm syndrome, but never, even still pending some other things, have I felt really grounded in understanding them, or they had bested me from the jump and throughout.
From the strange and ominous warnings that you got, it's kind of clear that these hackers had some real psychological tactics. But beyond the mystery, the thing that really got under your skin was the specific personal information they had. You know, the stuff that wasn't public. It made you feel like you were truly being watched or chosen, and that they had high levels of infiltration. What were the exact things they knew about you that shook you so much that you do almost anything they asked?
100%. They cited a conversation I had in a car with my dad in 2015 in Connecticut, verbatim. They cited things I said in therapy that day, later that day. They would message me same day that I had those sessions saying, "You talked about this in therapy today. Tell us more about that." And things that I don't, and you know, that should never leave the walls of my therapy session. Yeah, I mean, that's probably enough, but there's a lot more. Yeah.
So, Adam, it sounds a little bit like the Pegasus spyware that we've discussed in the past could have been deployed here, right?
Yeah, it's software developed in Israel that can secretly access everything on your phone. Messages, emails, even your camera and mic without you knowing. It's been used in high-profile cases, and it would explain how the hackers knew so much about you.
Yeah. So that begins my, delusional days of thinking that I'm a secret agent, because I would, for example, one day walked into therapy, went into the bathroom, wrote on toilet paper, follow me to the bathroom and leave your phone. Walked into the office, showed that to my therapist, and he's such an awesome guy. You can see if you listen to the show. He leaves his phone, we go into the office, and I tell him about it. We have a whole conversation, almost half the session, and then we go back into his office and have a normal session like nothing else was happening. And many, many things like that. And so I was very aware. I learned what a Faraday cage is and have several different devices, and started to make use of being aware of when I was around microphones and cameras and when I wasn't.
Yeah. So a Faraday cage, for those listening, is a device. It's a system. It's a bag, actually. In this case, where lead and copper are used to interrupt signals. So you actually can put a device in a Faraday bag. Michael Faraday, I think, is the person who figured it out back in the 1800s, and it does work. Most people who use Faraday technology, Faraday cage or a bag, they still, if they can, will power down. But the NSA files that were leaked by Edward Snowden were all protected by Faraday cages. That's the kind of technology we're talking about. Okay, so what did your attacker or spy or whatever say to you that time you went to the bathroom and there was a big gap in your therapy? Did they say, "Hey, like what the hell did you do there? Are you trying to like get around our microphones?"
They didn't say anything. I wonder if that's because I tricked them, or if it's they laughed at my efforts to conceal information. The thing I said to my dad in a car was in 2015, years before this happened. That implies they have access to a backlog of things said around cameras and microphones.
I know you're leading us there, but Pegasus, archiving conversations. During the COVID shutdowns, you started a new job that seemed to make you the perfect mole.
It wasn't clear to me. First section of the story, the New York section, but it was super clear once I got to LA and was working at this COVID site. They wanted me to get close to the administrators. They wanted me to get close to these well-known public figures, and they always reminded me, keep your cell phone out. And that's another example too, is like when I was wearing the PPE, I knew that they couldn't hear through my PPE, and they're like, have your PPE out and ask people who are coming to get tested, ask them certain questions, ask the administrators certain questions, do all of this stuff. And at that point, because again, if we want to be sane, if entertaining this as real, whatever that means, is on the other side of the line. And so it took me to get to LA and to have all this stuff going on where I was like, okay, wait, is this actually possibly real? And if so, this feels like treason. So they're telling me to do all this stuff, and I'm in too deep and in over my head, but I'm also kind of concealing my phone, trying to be very aware of like, oh, I'll give them this. I'll talk about this in front of my phone, but then I'll put my phone away and talk about something else. And I was trying to not commit a major crime, but I also couldn't escape.
Max, things kept spiraling, and it sounds like you were way in too deep. But what happened when the hackers came back? This time with even bigger demands. Stick around after the break. We'll find out.
This episode is brought to you by Nespresso Virtual Coffee Machines. Ready to enjoy the bold flavors of barista-quality Nespresso iced coffee at home? Simply fill a glass with ice and press the brew button on your virtual pop machine to enjoy rich double espressos roasted to stand up even when chilled. Refreshingly bold iced coffee. Refreshingly easy to make at home. Visit Nespresso.com to shop now.
Hey, this is Bill Simmons from the Bill Simmons Podcast, here to help you make the most of your summer with Michelob Ultra, a superior light beer worth playing for. Play for it with the guys when you're competing to see who can sink more birdies on the golf course, because winning tastes even better with Ultra on the line. Play for Ultra. Fill your fridge with Michelob Ultra this summer. Enjoy responsibly. Copyright 2025 Anheuser-Busch Michelob Ultra Light Beer, St. Louis, Missouri.
Max, you've told us how your life was turned upside down. These hackers knew everything about you and pulled you into what felt like some kind of spy game. Then you moved to Los Angeles, got a job at a COVID site, and the spying, it all started to feel too much. But you didn't walk away. Why didn't you just stop talking to them?
Yeah, once I was in LA, and mind you, like the mindset of all of us during COVID, like we all kind of reckoned a little bit with like the world is not what it seems, and then you add this on top of that, and I felt comforted by them at that point. I didn't even come close to telling them to go away. I certainly begged them for more information about who they were and what they wanted me to do, but it took till the quote unquote end, I guess, before the epilogue of this, that for me to really fight back. And it took a lot for me to get there too. At this point, I'm not telling anybody. There's nobody in my life who knows about this. So talk about you're only as sick as your secrets. I had one very big secret.
Okay, and the secret was that you were being used as a mole by people who were interested in learning more about COVID protocols in the United States, is what it sounds like. You're here talking to us today because something happened. You hit a breaking point. This story has a beginning, middle, and an end. What was the breaking point for you?
So in terms of my relationship with them, the breaking point was that they started talking about dream hacking and thought hacking, which to them is the human mind is the final war. That's the final frontier in terms of hacking, getting people's information, influencing people to different degrees of consciousness. So they started talking about that. I wasn't telling anyone. I came as close as I could have come to really losing my mind. I was putting my cell phone in the oven at night. I was waiting for someone to come and get me, which they said was happening. I was very unwell. And then I started dating a girl who I dated in college, and one night I realized it was like a moment of grace. I had to tell her. And I did, and she almost left, but then she didn't. And then she said she was like, it's them or me, which was the greatest gift I think I could have gotten in that moment. And so I went to Brian immediately. I printed out the messages that I had screenshotted and saved, and I still have saved. I left my phone, my computer, everything in the car. I went into his house and I showed him this. He put me in touch with Citizen Lab, Wired magazine. He gave me some really great resources. And then later, another friend suggested that a good format for this would be a podcast. And so they were like, but you need to call law enforcement. So I called the FBI on Thanksgiving of 21. And I told someone my whole story. They said, someone will call you in the new year or never. And then the next day, I get a call from an agent. And 2 days later, they're at my house. 2 men in suits at my little Venice bungalow in LA. And I told them everything. And I was like, guys, I thought this was like a joke for a while. Then I was in too deep. I am happy to be an American. I don't want to go to jail. Like I was begging them now. Not a great secret agent. And at the time, what they said to me was, we don't think these are dissidents. We think it's actually Chinese military. And they use this story to get to you because you're more of like a dissident guy than like a military guy or whatever. And then they said, we'll call you in 2 weeks. Worst 2 weeks of my life. I thought I was going to jail. I was still very unwell. And then they called me, and I'll never forget what he said. He said, the good news is you never have to worry about these fuckers ever messing with you again. And the bad news is we can't tell you anything about it. And they had, by the way, I had asked them foolishly, hey, can I have someone make a statement for me or be on my podcast? And they were like, yeah, sure, totally. And they totally just played me. There's more. I want to leave a little left to wonder for my show, but there's been FOIPAs, there's been pushback, There's been help with the FOIPAs. There's been, I've talked to people who worked at the NSA and the former head of IT security at the White House, and it's gotten even more strange.
So you've done Freedom of Information Act requests, and you will hear back when you no longer care. But and it'll be all redacted.
I heard back 6 weeks later, and the document was fully redacted. Fully.
So, Max, it sounds like this story is still unfolding, right?
If you feel resolved by this story, I'm glad in terms of being able to tell a good story today. But there is still there are still just a couple more untapped resources into the investigation of it. I think in terms of the character arc, I have what I need on the inside or whatever. But in terms of the investigation, there's one or two more lines in the water that could bear fruit. But we'll see.
Max, this has been an incredible story, a wild reminder of just how vulnerable we can be in the digital world. Your experience really drives home how exposed our digital lives are and the importance of being aware of who and what might be watching. Thank you so much for sharing it with us.
And for anyone listening, if this doesn't make you want to lock down your digital footprint, cool. You should consider it. Max, it sounds like you've come through a serious mind and I'm impressed. You handled it well.
Thank you.
Thanks for giving us a brief glimpse into what you've gone through.
Thanks for making sure I never sleep at nights now. For anyone who wants to dive deeper into Max's story, the podcast is The Final War. And Max, if people want to hear it or learn more, where do they go?
Everywhere. Spotify, Apple, Instagram, The Final War podcast, or The Final War Pod is what it's called. Thank you guys too, because your expertise, the questions you asked, I have not been asked before. It's been a really interesting insight. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, I'm glad to help make you more paranoid. Thanks so much. It was good to meet you, Max.
Thanks, Max.
Nice to meet you too.
And now it's time for the tinfoil swan.
Our paranoid takeaway to keep you safe on and offline.
I don't know if you guys have seen this in the news, but 23andMe has had some, let's just say, issues.
Yeah, issues. Yeah, like my mom. If you've ever done the swab for 23andMe, you might want to pay attention. These things are questionable to be sending to a company with data breaches lawsuits. So a stock price that's tanking faster than my hope in the world today.
Well, it turns out that giving away your genetic data for an ancestry breakdown might come with a few complications, like having your personal info, birth details, family info, even your name, pop up on the dark web. You know, the place where privacy goes to die.
Oh, that place.
Yeah, and it's not just the breach either. 23andMe has also been caught up in a class action lawsuit, and there's even talk of a potential third-party takeover, which might mean that all that data that you gave them might go on sale. So yeah, if you're worried before, you should probably be even more worried now.
Well, now, here's the thing. Now, usually, you got to check the privacy policy, but usually the privacy policy does protect users against a sale and bankruptcy. But let's just say they don't, and check. 23andMe says you can delete your data if you're done with the site. Really? Really?
Not quite. Well, sure, you can delete most of your personal info, but they're legally required to keep some of it. You know, just a little something to comply with those, quote, legal obligations, unquote.
Yeah, they're like, well, delete your stuff except for the things we'll hang on to forever, like your birth date, your genetic information, maybe a few other tidbits just for the memories.
Which is super awesome when you think about how the internet, is like and our digital lives are constantly, evolving. And so like it could be that somebody maybe could use that digital, information, especially our genetic information, to turn us into, I don't know, a frog. I don't know.
That's riveting. So, what's the real takeaway? Deleting your 23andMe data might help, a little. But once that genetic info is out there, it's kind of hard to pull it back.
Yeah. I mean, you can delete your account if it helps you sleep at night. But don't think that means your genetic data is gone for good from the internet, from the places where it might be getting sold and resold. So, once you've shared your DNA, it's like sharing, I don't know, your relationship status. It's just out there. It's in the wild.
So if you're feeling paranoid, like we obviously are, maybe it's time to just scrub your info. But remember, in the world of DNA testing, once it's out, it's out.
And that's our tinfoil swan. Hey, everybody. Thanks for listening to this episode of What the Hack. And I've got big news. What the Hack has been nominated for a Signal Award. To vote for What the Hack, go to vote.signalaward.com. We're nominated under shows and then general technology, and you can cast your vote for What the Hack right there. For more information, see the post at instagram.com/LoudTreeMedia. Thanks again for listening, and don't forget to vote at vote.signalaward.com.
What the Hack with Adam Levin is a production of Loud Tree Media. You can find us online at adamlevin.com and on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook at Adam K. Levin.
Behind every great meal is a person with a story to tell. Hear them on Culinary Characters Unlocked, the podcast that reveals the lives behind the food. Hosted by me, David Page, Emmy Award-winning journalist and creator of Diners, Drive-Ins, and Dives, as I talk with everyone from culinary legends to mom-and-pop standouts about the creativity, grit, and passion that shape the food we love. Follow Culinary Characters Unlocked on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts.
Behind every empire are the people history tried to forget. Lost Roman Heroes tells the stories of the remarkable characters who shaped Rome from its mythical beginnings to its final fall.
Each episode blends armchair storytelling, sharp historical insight, and a bit of humor to bring these lost figures to life. From generals to scientists, from rebels to empresses, from priests to politicians, these lost Roman heroes have one thing in common.
They stood up for civilization when the bad guys threatened, and in doing so, they changed the course of human history. If you're into history that's vivid, surprising, and deeply human, this show's for you.